hello. Welcome to Cordogg Experience, where I talk Ohio State Buckeyes. If you like Buckeye Talk, please hit the like button. If you like the content or just Buckeye Talk in general, please subscribe and help me grow this thing out. I'm just going to jump right into it. The college football rankings came out earlier this week. Had our first game as the number two ranked team in the nation. First game on, not the first game on the road, but first game as a ranked opponent was at Northwestern, 1-17. A lot of folks were expecting a blowout. They came in as 38 point favorites, and a lot of people expected them to be able to get some stuff back on track, given some of the difficulties we had the previous 2 weeks in the running game or whatnot. But you checked in to see what the weather conditions were going to be, and you had a feeling it was going to be difficult for them to do some of the stuff they are accustomed to doing in the passing game. And I think that panned out over the course of the game. The game in of itself was an ugly game. The weather conditions made it so. It was a very sloppy game, ugly game. Couldn't get much done because as a result of the weather conditions, it's hard to go against Mother Nature. She's going to win that contest the majority of the time. But at the end of the day, when all said and done, they got the win. But of course, there's some stuff you can take away from that. But they got the win at the end of the day. And that's all you can ask for at this point moving forward is win, survive, and move on. They did that. They got the win. Was not pretty by any means of the imagination. Was it tougher than what it should have been? Most likely. But when you break it down, I'm try to break it down a little bit further and just look at what Pat Fitzgerald put into that game plan. He game planned it perfectly. He game planned it perfectly, but it is what it is. He game planned it to a T, and he used the weather conditions to his advantage. He knew going in what the weather conditions were going to be like, and he tailor-made his defense to make Ohio State pretty much one-dimensional because Mother Nature had a big hand in that. Mother Nature herself took away the passing game. So with that in mind, Pastor Gerald developed a game plan to make it as difficult as possible for Ohio State to run the ball and do what they needed to do offensively. But it's a win. And of course, directly following that game, being that it was an earlier game, you can imagine the comments that followed. A lot of them were negative. When the posters, if that's what a number two team looked like, they don't look like a number two team to me. And early on in the game, early on in the day, they were one of the first games played. It was easy to come away with that sentiment. They, for all intents and purposes, did not look like the number two team in the nation. In particular, when you're playing a team that is 1-7, it did not look pretty, and a lot of the social media comments reflected upon that. They played a 1-7 team, and they did not look good. They didn't look good, but you got to look deeper into it. And again, just touch upon what I just mentioned. When you look at the weather conditions they were playing in, you got a smart coach in Pat Fitzgerald who's going to tailor-make his whole game plan based around the weather conditions. He used the weather conditions to his advantage. And you got weather conditions that they played in, it has a way of equaling out the playing field to a degree. I mean, at the end of the day, talent is going to win out, but he played a perfect game plan. They could not throw the ball. And if you cannot throw the ball because of the weather and the wind, which we couldn't go in either direction, it was hard to throw the ball. Going against the wind's going to knock it down. You throw with the wind at your back, the ball sailed. And I thought we saw that on several occasions when Ohio State was going with the wind at their back. It was hard to complete passes. You had the rain smacking them in the face. The wind, as we learned, it made it difficult for the offensive linemen to pick up the blocking schemes and blocking patterns, and that led to some of the difficulties running in this particular game. They've had their problems running before, but in this particular game, wind made it hard to hear the blocking schemes and pick up the blocking patterns. And And it's not an excuse. Say it's not an excuse per se, but it's a reason why they had difficulty blocking, in particular the first half. And you got a coach who was banking on the bad weather, devised his defensive scheme based on that bad weather, and they're pitting 8 and 9 guys in the box. Now, I don't care what the discrepancy is in talent. It's hard for people to make up those blocking patterns if they got more defenders in the box than you got blockers. And that's what took place a lot in that first half of the game. Northwestern, they were stacking the box, and they had more defenders than we had blockers, and it's going to make it difficult to run. Again, people don't want to use the weather as an excuse. Well, both teams played in the same weather, and they did. And Fitzgerald, he had a game plan tailor made to that. He had a quarterback that fit that type of stuff they wanted to do. Well, he has a running quarterback, and we're gonna get on that in a second. But he had a running quarterback, and then made that the RPO option, and made it very effective that first half. They used it to get out to the 7-0 lead, and it took Ohio State time to adjust. But when they did, they shut them down the rest of the game. They got out to the 7-0 lead, playing in the same conditions. Their quarterback, he played to his quarterback strengths. They have a good running back. They had a good blocking scheme. They knew what they wanted to do going into that game. And he told you when we had the wind on our back, when we're going with the wind, we're going to open up some. When we're going against the wind, they ran that four corners offense. They were running the clock down. They were in no hurry to get any plays off when they were going against the wind. They just sat there and they were just waiting for the clock to run down. They were in no hurry or not to get any plays off. And they had a perfectly tailor-made game plan, given the conditions, given their opponent, given that this was their Super Bowl. Another thing, this was their Super Bowl. Ohio State's coming off a big win at Penn State. You see a team with a 1-7 record, young kids. No matter what the coaches are telling you, there's going to be a slight letdown, and you can see they didn't like they wanted to be there. Quite honestly, for the good portion of that game, they did not look like they were all that interested in being there. I mean, it's ugly weather, sloppy, 117, a team that's 1-7. They was like, let's just go play this game, get out of there, and get back to Columbus and get ready for next week. You know, Pat Fitzgerald and his crew had other plans, and they game planned it perfectly. They did what they needed to do. They held on to the ball when they were going against the clock, and they tried to do their stuff when they had to win. They were doing their stuff when they were going against the wind in terms of, like I said, game planning and just running the clock down. Then when they had to win against the back, they tried to do stuff. They tried to get a little more up-tempo. They tried to play to their quarterback strengths and their running back strengths, and like I said, they curtailed that to a 7-point lead, and they maintained that for a good portion of the game because they just held on to the ball and they ran their offense perfectly. And you got a lot of comments following that game as to our defense was, they weren't tackling, they weren't doing this, they weren't doing that. But at the end of the day, Northwestern only scored 7 points. So I don't know when it was all said and done, I think they ended up averaging less than 3 yards per play. And yet our defense was getting ripped for some reason. And then it started to balance out some. But it's like people were like, "What do you want the defense to do?" They held them to 7 points. They held them to 3 yards per play. The defense did a good job. You're not gonna, no matter what, you're not gonna have a team. You're not gonna completely shut down a team. You're just not. And I don't know if they just trolling or just unrealistic of what our defense is capable of. But you hold a team to 7 points, regardless of the conditions. You hold a team to 7 points. You hold them to less than 3 yards per play. Your defense, to my liking, they had a good day. They gave up the 7-point lead. They didn't give up nothing else the rest of the game. Offense, we ran off 21 straight points when it was all said and done. So, weather conditions aside, I thought we played a decent game. Could have been better, but when you got the win, like I was saying, you're not going to get these offensive explosions because the wind actually made you one dimensional. You're not going to be able to throw the ball the way you're used to throwing the ball, and that played itself out. It was hard. You throwing into the wind's knocking it down. You throw with the wind, the ball's sailing on them. They did that a couple times. Even the punters, they weren't trying to get air on their punts. They were kicking they're kicking the little nubbler balls because you get any type of height on those type of punts, the wind's going to you don't know what the wind's going to do with it. Might just throw it back in your face. So the wind played havoc. A lot of people wanted. I don't know if folks have never played in those type of conditions, but when the wind gets going, it's hard playing in 30 to 40 mile hours wind, and I don't know what people expected Stroud and offense to do in those type of conditions. Yes, both teams were playing in it, and at the end of the day, when you look at it, Ohio State beat Northwestern at the game they game planned on playing. And yes, eventually talent wins out when you're playing on equal level fields, and that's what eventually happened. Talent did win out, but conditions like that, it's gonna equal the playing field. Ohio State fought through it. I thought they hunkered down. They got a little bit interested into the game, it seems, and they did what they needed to do, given the circumstances, given the conditions. I don't know if you want to call it excuses or whatnot. It is what it is. They played the game. They came out with the win, and it's not always easy to do. When you play at one, it's hard to get up for a 1-7 team that's 1-7. It's even harder when you're coming off an emotional win at one of your rivals in Penn State. That was a high energy atmosphere. You go to Northwestern, dreary weather conditions. It's just a natural. Let's just go do this. And while on their side, they were hyped up. Got the number 2 team in the CFP rankings coming into our house, and we're going to give it all our got. What do we got to lose? And they played like it. So hats off to Fitzgerald and Northwestern. They came to play and they played their tails off, but eventually no talent went out. Ohio State got their feet up under them and did what they needed to do in terms of winning the game. Okay. So what came out, a good thing about the game, you always look for the silver lining, but the good thing about the game was something I've been asking for, something I mentioned on several other posts, that at some point during the season, your boy Stroud was going to have to run the ball and win the game with his legs. And folks recognized that immediately following the game, even during the game. During the game when he the post went up immediately. Oh my God, he ran the ball. Yes, he ran the ball. He did he did what he needed to do given the circumstances, and that's what folks have been asking for all year. When the opportunity is there, run the ball, cause like conditions like today, you're not going to be able to line up, and blow folks off the ball and run it with your running back. You're just not going to be able to do it. The threat of the pass was not there. There wasn't going to be no run play. We don't run that anyway, but the threat of the pass was not there. The safeties did not have to worry about the receivers for the most part. They were ready to come down and support the run, and that's basically what their game plan was. We're gonna let Mother Nature handle the back end, handle the passing. We don't think you guys are gonna be able to do that given the weather, and we're gonna focus on stopping the run, and that's what they did. And folks are bashing. And granted, the O-line hasn't been what we need it to be in terms of the running game, but in this game in particular, you got a defense geared to stopping the run, and folks they were on the offensive line. The wind doesn't affect blocking, the wind doesn't affect this, the wind doesn't affect that. But my argument would be just what I've been pointing out. If you can't throw the ball, and other teams know you can't throw the ball because of the wind, because of the conditions, and they can focus solely on the run, it's going to affect your running. And then the boot, to hear, and you know how you got the little things in your ears, the holes in your helmet. You can't make the line calls that you need to be. You know, the center, they can't hear you if the wind's you can't. You're not gonna be able to hear the blocking patterns. If you see the folks lining up, you calling it out, and the center's calling out the thing, or Stroud's in the back calling it out, and they can't hear you because the wind's swirling. You're not gonna make all your blocks. So yes, the wind can affect the running game, and so that's just my take on those type of arguments that the blocking, the wind, the rain doesn't affect the running game, because if you can't hear the blocking calls, you can't hear the switch ups, you're not gonna make the right block. You're not gonna make the right read to make the block. So yes, it does affect the running game, and they were focusing it in on Mayan and Williams in the running game. But at the end of the day, though, remind you, he still had over 100 yards. Had to work to get there, but my man had over 100 yards at the end of the day. We had over 200 yards rushing at the end of the day, which circles me back around to my boy. C.J. Stroud finally did what a lot of folks were asking him to do, or calling for him to do, whether by design or when the opportunity's there. The coaching staff saw it, made the proper adjustments, and you guys saw it on that, in particular on that one with the 44-yard run. That was just beautiful. The whole the whole defense swarmed to him. The corner on that, who was supposed to have the outside contained, you could see it. When Stroud kept the ball and started going around, I could just picture in his head what he was thinking. He was like, oh my God, the brother about to run the damn ball. You could just, cause there was nothing there. It was just wide open. And he ran for 40 something yards, set up the touchdown. I mean, his running on the day set up 2 of the touchdowns. We don't get those touchdowns without Stroud running the ball, taking what the defense gave him. I mean, some people said it was a trick play, him faking it. It's just quarterback around the end there after you fake the handoff, but it might as well been a trick play, but we don't do it. Stroud does not run. So yeah, you tricked the hell out of the Northwestern defense. And like I said, that corner, the dude that had the outside contained, you could just like, oh shit, he running. Our coaches didn't say he does. Our coaches said he does not run, but he ran that day. He ran the other day, and he set up the 2 touchdowns. To me, that's what I've been asking for, because we getting, especially on social media, you got the trolls or whatever you want to call them, who are just fixated on him not running the ball. I mean, fixated when folks say he needs to run the ball, and they get it twisted. Well, we don't want J.T. Barrett. We don't want Braxton Miller. Let him throw the ball. But I don't know where along the line the definition of quarterback turned into he can only throw the ball and not do nothing else. To me, that's not a quarterback's job. A quarterback's job is to do what's necessary to make the game easier for you and your offense, to make the game easier for you and your team, and to help win the game. So in my eyes, what Justin Fields, what C.J. Stroud did the other day was perfect. If anything, a lot of people just hurt his Heisman chances. And that early on in the game, with that being the first game, it was probably easy to make that argument until the rest of the afternoon and evening played out. You look back on what C.J. Stroud did in that game. Did he really hurt his hand? Did he really hurt his Heisman chances? I would say no. I don't think he did. When you put the whole day together and what the other candidates did, Hooker had a terrible day. Granted, it was Georgia, but he had a terrible day. He didn't throw no TDs. He didn't do anything to set up stuff. Bryce Young looked terrible against LSU. I mean, those are only 2 people that get mentioned with Stroud, and Stroud had a better day than him because he led his team to a victory. I mean, if Hooker or Bryce Young had 79 yards rushing, something that was way out of his wheelhouse, something he has never done. I mean, for a good portion there, he was leading the team in rushing yards. In your wildest imagination, did you ever imagine C.J. Stroud leading Ohio State in rushing yards? I just, you can't picture that, but he was leading the team in rushing yards. C.J. Stroud, say that again. C.J. Stroud was leading the team in rushing yards. I was ecstatic. I was like, yeah, yeah. You know, that's all we've been asking for. See, he led those two runs, led to 2 touchdowns, cemented the game. And that's all, folks. When the opportunity's there, just do it once or twice a game. And if anything moving forward, what those 2 runs also have done is moving forward now, teams may have to be wary. Oh man, this brother might just keep the ball and run. They ain't gonna be able to just crash down, because Northwestern, you saw, they were just crashing down. And when he got that 44-yard run, that whole side of the field was open, because they were just crashing down. They had no idea C.J. Stroud was about to keep that ball and run. And now teams moving forward, they're going to have to think about that. Even in the comments, people are saying, I hope he does that against Michigan, because who knows what the conditions are. Late November game, they could be very similar, and the brother may have to run some in that game too. And now Michigan knows, oh dang, he might just run if we keep crashing down on their running backs. You know, so I was ecstatic. That's what I've been calling for. And then, you know, the social media folks, you got the folks, well, are you guys happy he ran? I'm like, hell yeah, I'm happy. You set up 2 touchdowns. Why wouldn't you not be happy? Why would you not be happy for your quarterback to make the game easier on the team? And then I responded, said, yeah, I was happy. Tell me what not about him running makes you unhappy. And of course, then they have crickets when he actually does it. You know, they never have a response. So I'm asking for folks out there who do not want C.J. Stroud to ever run the ball under any other circumstances. In the comments, just please let me know why. Because we've seen it all throughout the season. And even going back to last season, the opportunities are there, and he doesn't run. He told you, I don't get paid to run, especially now after NIL deal. I don't get paid to run. I'm here. You know, to me, that's not, a quarterback's more than just toting. You gotta run the ball every now and then. So what about him running? Do you guys want him just to be a pocket passer? You know, again, looking at our comments and the totality of what we're asking when in terms of C.J. Stroud running the ball. When the opportunity is there for you to get 3 or 4 yards, take it, slide, get down. That's all we're asking. So many times this season already, he's held on to the ball. He's either thrown it away where he could have gotten 3 or 4 yards. He's forced to pass. He probably should have more interceptions, but the defenders keep dropping the damn ball. But he's forced some passes where the lane was there for him to run. I gave a great example in my previous posting how the ocean was there against Michigan State. He waited, and when he finally decided to, maybe I can run, he got sacked. So what about him just taking what the defense gives him makes you guys say, oh, why you want him to run? That's why we want him to run. His 2 runs set up 2 touchdowns yesterday. That's why we're just clamoring for him to run once or twice a game when the opportunity presents itself, or like they did out of necessity more than anything, because they probably wouldn't have done it if mine was able to have some more daylight. But they said, you know what, these guys are crashing so hard, fake it, go around the end, 44 yards, player 2 later, touchdown. You can use it to set up other stuff. Makes it easier on Mayan Williams. Will make it easier on Trevion Henderson if the threat is there. Now I think the threat is there. As long as they consistently do it once or twice a game, the threats there that he just might keep the ball, might keep that defensive end anchored a little bit so he's not crashing down so much. Might keep those linebackers fixated. All it takes is a split second. Split second, they might. All it takes is a second of football. Um, that's why it's important for me and those in those who think like me why it's important for C.J. Stroud to run the ball every now and then. Not trying to turn him into a running quarterback. Or want him to be a quarterback that takes what the defense gives to him, and because at the end of the day, that's the quarterback's job. It's not just to simply sit back there and throw the ball. So shortly following the game, yeah, I can see that argument where it may have hurt his Heisman chances, but when you look at it at the totality of how the rest of the day played out, he led his team to a win. He did what he needed to do. He put the team on his back and he ran. Sat up to 2 touchdowns, because I guarantee you if Bryce Young had run and set up the 2 touchdowns, they'd be giving him all types of accolades. Why his running is sort of getting underplayed, I don't know, but his running set up the 2 touchdowns. He should get credit for that. And to me, Heisman moments are not always these spectacular, dazzling plays. To me, a Heisman moment is doing what he did yesterday. He put the team on his back. He was leading the team in rushing. He did what he needed to do to garner the victory and get out of there, given sloppy conditions. He did what he needed to do. Put the team on his back, which to me even gets more respect from your team because he did run, designed or not, he ran. And what made me even more on that 44-yard run is he had the opportunity to step out of bounds around the 10-yard line or so, but y'all saw it. He stayed in bounds and got another 5 yards or so. And he took the hit. He stayed in bounds, took the hit, and and even some people are still unhappy with that. Well, he should have scored if he was a running back. Well, he should have scored. He could have had 2 touchdowns rushing. Okay, true. Maybe he could have, but I'm just impressed with the fact that he ran. I'm impressed with the fact that he opted not to go out of bounds. He stayed in bounds and got those with additional 5 yards. Maybe he learned, hey, maybe getting hit ain't so bad after all. I can do this once or twice a game to make it easier, to help move the chains, because second and short's a lot better than second and long. Third and short's a lot better than third and long. Getting a first down on third down is better than fourth and short and having to punt. So whatever you can do it. And I think he did an excellent job in doing that. And I don't think when it's all said and done, he hurt his Heisman chances one bit, given the way the rest of the day played out. So I think everything's still right there for Ohio State. Everything's still right there for C.J. Stroud. So talking about the rest of the day. So, following the game, oh man, yeah, we're going to drop in the rankings. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. We look bad. We suck. So 1-17. But as the day played on, that 27 win over Northwestern was looking a lot better. I don't care if it's 1-7, the team's 1-7. A W is a W is a W at the end of the day. They did what they needed to do. They got out of there with the win. And like I said, the way the rest of the day played out, I don't think their number 2 ranking is in jeopardy at all. Because a lot of people, because as the results started coming in, the posts started to change. They started changing. Yeah, we stunk, but would you rather be Ohio State right now, or would you rather be Bama, Clemson, Tennessee? Would you rather be one of those 3 teams? Obviously, Tennessee probably is not going to hurt them as much, but Bama, for all intents and purposes, should be eliminated. It's hard to say that because they're still SEC. But I can't picture a 2-loss Bama team getting in under any circumstances unless every team in front of them totally collapses. But it's SEC. You just never say never. But Bama's pretty much out of the picture. And then Clemson's done. I don't care how they try to spin it. Clemson is done. You can't lose like that. to Notre Dame. No, Notre Dame. No, I'll get that. But you can't lose like that. You can't lose like that. People were already questioning Clemson to begin with. They shouldn't be there, and I think that just took care. Notre Dame took care of Clemson. I don't care what Clemson does the rest of the year. They're not going to. I can't see a scenario where they're going to the playoffs again unless everybody in front of them just completely collapses, and the likelihood of that happening, I think is slim. I'll leave it at slim. Michigan and Ohio State still got to play. Georgia still has to play the champion of the Eastern Division. But even if Georgia loses at this point forward, Georgia is probably the best positioned team moving forward because even if they lose now, they've already beaten Tennessee. They've beaten Oregon, which that win is looking much, much, much better for Georgia now. So I think Georgia's the only one that's really insulated from missing the playoffs. I can't see a scenario where Georgia doesn't make the playoffs unless they just, as a team, just completely collapse. But Ohio State, we still have Michigan. Still got that game. And hopefully they can look better in their other games that they're supposed to look good in moving forward because, the birds are already called and be interesting to see what some of the shows will be saying tomorrow morning about Ohio State and how they look. I hope they take in consideration conditions and some of the stuff that Stroud did, how Fitzgerald game planned it, and just how they tried to do the four corners offense on this thing, ran down the clock, and it was effective. But at the end of the day, we beat them. We beat Northwestern at their game. That's what good teams do. We're going to beat you, but we're going to beat you at your own style of football, and they did that. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't see them dropping pass. Them do, especially how the way the rest of the day played out. Like I said, you had Bama loss, Tennessee, which to me that last touchdown they scored doesn't take away from the fact how badly they were dominated. They were dominated. Hooker looked terrible. I mean, Bryce Young in his loss. Alabama fought, but I told you this ain't the same Alabama team. And LSU, for all intents and purposes, should have knocked them out of playoff contention, but it's the SEC. But would you rather be Ohio State now, or would you rather be one of those three teams? Again, an ugly win. An ugly win is better than a pretty loss. And it always will be, because at the end of the day, if they can keep that 0 in the loss column, you're doing good. You're doing good. Keep that 0 in the loss column. You're doing good. It'll be interesting to see. It will be interesting to see how the rankings come out. Who they're going to move up. What the effect is going to be on the TCU. Because I'm imagining the 4 teams. How far are they going to drop Tennessee? That's the question now. Because Georgia's going to be 1. We already knew the winner of that game was going to be 1 regardless. Ohio State could have won 100-0. Whoever won that Georgia-Tennessee game was going to be number 1. I can't see Ohio State dropping, given the way the rest of the day played out. They'll be at number 2. If they stand pat, Michigan should be number 3. They look sluggish in their own right. Again, they were trailing Rutgers. Yeah, at the end of the day, it was a blowout, but they were trailing Rutgers at the break. And TCU, they were trailing in their game at home. But those are the 4 teams I'm imagining will be the top 4. I don't see TCU leapfrogging Michigan because just where they started, but they may not even leapfrog Tennessee because just again, it's Tennessee and it's the SEC, and they did lose to Georgia, who everyone thought was the best team anyway. So I got a top 3 of Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan. Then it should be TCU, but I doubt if it's going to be. And so I'm thinking it's going to be Tennessee, and then TCU will be number 5, and then you would think Alabama would drop, or they might just swap them with LSU, or they'll put Oregon there because Oregon, that's their only loss. It was a bad loss, but I can see Oregon being number 6. Let's see, you got Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, Tennessee, yeah, Oregon. Oregon, I got Oregon, yeah, Oregon at number 6, and then probably Alabama, and then whoever else, Utah, USC. We'll see how it plays out, but that's my recap, my think on how stuff is going. Just to close it up, it was the perfect day for Ohio State, given the crappy conditions, to have probably your worst game of the season. You couldn't have picked a better weekend given how the rest of the day played out. They got a chance now to go back and see some other stuff they can work on. Um, they can work some more CJ Stroud stuff into the offensive scheme. It's there now. It's in their wheelhouse. They know it can be done. You get teams crashing down, you know what? We're going to roll them out. Y'all want to keep crashing down if you want. It's there. Keep that in the back of your mind. CJ Stroud will run the ball if we need him to. So, gonna be interesting to see how the rank, how the shows tomorrow, where they put Ohio State, because you know it's the SEC bias and ESPN. They typically look down on anything not SEC, but we'll see. We'll see. I can't imagine them moving them down past number 2. That Notre Dame win was big. Just touch back on that. That Notre Dame win was big. Yeah, they lost to Marshall. Yeah, they lost to Stanford, but they trounced the number 4 team in the CFP ranking post, and Ohio State beat them. So that's the one argument between Ohio State and Michigan. Say what you want about Notre Dame losing to Stanford and losing to Marshall. That's still better than anything on Michigan's non-conference schedule. And the fact that they just beat Syracuse and Clemson pretty handily, I think that speaks volumes to Ohio State's strength of schedule. I can't see them keeping Notre Dame out of the rankings moving forward, which will give another ranked team on Ohio State's non-conference schedule is better than anything Michigan done. In terms of non-conference wins, you got Georgia over Oregon. That might be the best non-conference win now out of the top 10. Out of conference. You know, the in-conference stuff is, play itself up. But out of conference, Ohio State's win over Notre Dame, even with Notre Dame losing to Stanford, even with Notre Dame losing to Marshall, that's looking like a pretty good win now, especially if Notre Dame can keep it rolling their own self. So we'll see how it plays out. But I see now Ohio State at number 2 across the board in all the rankings, because I can't see folks moving Michigan. Michigan's the only team you could realistically move in front of Ohio State. And if we're looking at the totality of the resumes, Michigan doesn't stack up. Their non-conference schedule is so pitiful. It doesn't stack up, and Notre Dame with the way Notre Dame's performing now and what they just did to Clemson, I think that bodes well for Ohio State. So anyway, that's my take on Ohio State Northwestern weekend. The rest of the first round of games following the initial playoff rankings. That's how I think things are going to shake out. Again, if you love the Buckeyes, like talking Buckeyes, please hit the like button. If you like what you're hearing, like the content, a fresh take on stuff and issues, please subscribe and help get this thing going. And until next time, peace. Thank you guys.